Well, I've written something, I'm afraid.
Great.
I don't trust my improvisational skills. So I'm writing this last Friday, actually, here in Brighton. I live in Brighton, at least someone is in Brighton today. I'm here in Brighton, and these clear blue skies are really fucking with my head. The sun on my neck feels a bit like a sprung trap. Those swifts in the warm spring air are a cruel misdirection. Because everything is falling apart, because futures are being snatched from us, because careers are slipping through our fingers, because anxiety levels are raging and infrastructures are collapsing, because the creative industry is disappearing and the health service is buckling and governments are failing, and because thousands of people are dying needlessly. And yet, that brooding swan on its nest in Queen's Park Lake, which is just a few minutes away from here, is fucking double crossing me. And the blossom on the wisteria is a cruel hoax. And the full moon on the spring tide is pulling a fast one. And yet, so this cognitive dissonance, a lockdown winter in the heart of spring, feels hopeful sometimes, at times even artful. So can we hold on to that, even when all of this is in the past and we're picking up the pieces? Art invites us to look differently, to think differently. It invites us to be vulnerable, questionable, open, empathetic. It invites us to shift our perspective, to reinvent. It gives us the understanding of one thing through the perception of something else. It heightens a sense of our meaning and often our mortality. So, this is the point, it feels like we're in an art state, that the world is currently in an art state. So let's think about this state we're in as an art state, in among all of the shit, or because of all of the shit. Last night, as our terraced street clapped for the key workers, we looked up and we saw a plane in the sky. A plane. That plane in the sky didn't just mean plane in the sky anymore. Just like a chair on a stage doesn't just mean chair, or a word in a poem doesn't just mean that word, or a line in a frame doesn't only mean that line. That plane, which was the first we'd seen for days, felt like a dramatic action, like an inciting incident, like a major plot twist, like a poem, like a fugue. Even before I saw the plane, the air that that plane flew through has recently become more than just air. The absence of air traffic and road traffic and pollution, the heightened sound of the birds, the significance of the ambulance sirens. The quietness isn't just the absence of noise anymore. It's connected to the whole world narrative. It's like a theme. The air isn't just air anymore. It's a story. Like silence in music isn't just silence, or the light on stage isn't just light. It's weighted and freighted with new significance. So nothing taken for granted, nothing as only one thing, every ordinary thing charged. Can we hold on to that? Even as we feel abandoned or broken or broke or lost or directionless. So the people in the city mean more than the people in the city used to mean. That strange COVID dance for social distance opens up a new understanding of space and proximity and otherness, new levels of awareness of sensitivity and community and isolation. Space has become more than just space. The people have become more than just people. Even if some of us are dying prematurely, maybe because some of us are dying prematurely, would art exist if nobody died? A cough has become more than just a cough. And then there's our new localized existence. This lockdown has transformed our stage, will transform our stages, our surfaces, our door handles, our breath, our shopping, our architecture, our town planning, our configurations, our bodies in relation to other bodies. Sometimes I hardly recognize the city I've lived in for over 20 years. walking through an empty Brighton train station at what used to be rush hour last week, it was a revelation, the kind of revelation that artists dream of, to see something new in something I'd taken for granted. Years ago, my friend and collaborator Andy Smith did a project when he placed a 2-meter cloth square on the ground, anywhere, on roundabouts, in shopping centres, fields, car parks. He sat in that square, and then he invited people to sit with him in it, one at a time, and to reflect on the world from within that confinement. So restriction in art is the prompt of new thinking. We can't do this, so we have to do that. We find a new freedom within our constraint. We overcome our limitations. We become more aware of ourselves through the new form defining us, our fragile form, our dependent form, our independent form, our interdependent form. So here's the provocation. How do we stay like this as we emerge from the pandemic? How do we keep conscious of our restrictions and help them to liberate us? How do we sustain the sense of the art state, whilst also feeding ourselves and caring for each other and making a living? We're told that these are weird times, strange times. And I confess, when I'm not freaking out about all the shit, I kind of revel in the strangeness. How do we hold on to the strange when the gravitational pull brings us back, wants to bring us back? How do we resist the normalization when normal was the thing we were challenging in the first place? Because the strangeness is always there. We just need to keep hold of it. It's the strange that keeps us inventing and creating, breaking patterns and old habits. So Brecht coined that phrase, making strange. It's a phrase that I use a lot when I'm thinking about my work. The act of making the familiar strange. Brecht also talked about the distancing effect, which is kind of ironic. So artistic distancing as opposed to social distancing. Distance as a trigger to understanding. Sometimes I feel like we are all in one big Brechtian gesture. So we are not audiences to this making strange, we are part of it. If lockdown is the author, then we are the interpreters, the actors, the agents. So stay strange, everyone. Keep the strangeness. Even as we eventually get to hold each other tightly, stay strange. And as the strange becomes familiar, find the new strange. I think it's about 8 minutes, 7 minutes.
Thanks, Tim. That's fantastically provocative. Thank you so much.